All right, so we are going to now discuss the test paper 7, the questions of economy particularly. ठीक है, तो इकोनॉमी के क्वेश्चंस आई होप कि आपके पास होंगे ही अभी तो. Just a moment. I think there is some technical glitch, so just a moment, give me some more time. Yes, so now it is visible to me, but I have to make it visible for you also. All right, so I hope this is now visible to you. So can you read the question? Anyone?
The
Yes,
farm
sir.
bills seem to have failed the purpose for which these were enacted. Should it be abolished, seeing the larger demand of the farmers?
So this is one of the hottest topics that is going on in India. At least all of you are well aware of this issue. So see, what you are supposed to do here. First and foremost, you need to know about the farm bills, the three farm bills. All right, and there are specific provisions. If you know, that's better. But if you, even if you do not know, let me tell you one more thing. That suppose some of you may not be able to remember or recall all the points of these all three farm bills. Even if you do not know, at least you know about the issues of these bills. In fact, so obviously you have to write about the name of the bills if you know, and then you have to write about what all proposals actually have been there. So why these bills were needed in India, in fact. Fine. So you have to first of all give one aspect of the rationality of these bills. Now, just see on your screen, I'm sharing the another green screen for all of you. So first of all, you will write about the rationality of these bills. That why did India need these three
Green
bills?
screen is not visible.
It's not visible. Just a moment. Let me share it then.
No.
Is it now?
No, sir.
No, not yet.
Visible, sir.
Visible, no? Okay, fine. So see, I mean, idea is that the rationality of farm bills have to be analyzed here. Fine. So what is the rationality of the farm bills? So see, farm bills rationality, if you see the three farm bills, I mean, the three farm bills are actually having certain purposes. So one farm bill is actually having a purpose of actually reforming the APMC mandis. Fine, that is one aspect of the farm bill. Second aspect of the farm bill is that it actually has to ensure that there should not be any limitation or limit to the uh, commodities as per the earlier Essential Commodities Act, except in certain circumstances where the prices actually goes up in the market during the inflationary time. Fine. So, of course, the essential commodities stocking is going to be now delimited. Fine. So this is what actually has been also the purpose of another farm bill. Third purpose was definitely in the context of the Contract Act or contract farming should be promoted in India. Fine. That's what actually is the purpose of the third bill. Now, see, these are the three very important purposes of the three bills. Fine. The point is that why does India need a reform in these three particular aspects? So you have to simply identify the rationality in the context of that the APMC mandis actually have been a problem in India in terms of course, not allowing the smooth or free trade and commerce, especially in the context of agricultural products. Because as per the law of APMC, that is Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Act. Now, as per the law, the first sale of agricultural products will have to go through mandatorily from the mandis. All right. So idea is the first sale of the product will have to go through the mandis. It can't go directly into the hand of the consumers unless there is an amendment in the law done by the state government. All right. So the first sale of agricultural product will have to go to the mandis, and thereby the logic says that they will have to pay taxes to the mandis. Now, the mandi tax or taxes are there in fact. All right. Why I say I wrote taxes because it does not only charge a mandi tax, rather there are other charges. Other charges also involved or always involved in the agricultural business transaction that is done inside the mandi. Fine. So by this logic, with the mandate taxes, other charges, it actually inflates the prices in the market. Fine. And there has been several occasions where because of this particular mandi taxes and the selling of the products to the mandi only, there has been inflationary trend in India quite for so long in India. For example, let me tell you 2011 onwards till 2013-14, India was witnessing a food inflation hovering around 8% plus continuously. Fine. So idea is that between this particular period, this particular food inflation was also caused due to this mandi taxes. Fine. So almost all the economists at that particular point of time, they voted in favor of abolishing these mandi practices in India. Because fact of the matter is that obviously everything in India has become free except agriculture. Everything in India has been liberalized except agriculture. So the idea is in agriculture, reform has not entered in India till now, despite the fact that APMC law was also amended in 2003. And in this 2003 APMC model law, we have already allowed two things. One is the contract farming. Now, at that particular point of time, there was no protest as such the way it is being seen currently. We have already done another reform in this particular law by allowing the farmers produce organizations to be formed in India, FPOs. So FPOs were allowed to be formed in India in 2003. It is called as private mandis. These private mandis are run by the farmers only. This is farmers' own mandis, basically. Now, at that point of time, no one protested. No one came on the street. So it was done already by the APMC law, model APMC law, in fact, in 2003. So the point is that we have to understand the rationality of removing this APMC control of the products is that APMC mandis also have become the instrument of further exploitation of the farmers. And not only the farmers, but also the consumers are also exploited by these mandis or through these mandis. So the mandis actually have become an agency of exploitation for both producers and consumers in India. because producers are selling it at the cost at a almost reasonable cost, at the cost marginally above their MSP, marginally above. All right, or maybe at the MSP also at times. Fine, but at the same hand, these mandis are selling this product to the consumers at a higher cost. So we are paying high price, farmers are receiving low price. Then who is consuming the entire benefit? These middlemen here who are sitting in their mandi. So actually, it is a middlemen who are actually going to get the benefit of this mandi practices in India. Fine, that is one fundamental, of course, reason that why APMC mandis reform had already been advocated even by Economic Survey of 2014-15. So the Economic Survey of 2014-15 had advocated the issue of the reform in the APMC as early as possible. Fine. And similarly, even Santa Kumar Committee that was formed by the Government of India in 2014 had submitted its recommendations in 2015. Shanta Kumar Committee had also recommended in the context of reforming this APMC regulated mandi system in India. Because you need to understand the taxes collected by the APMC mandis are not at all accountable. Now you can understand that the idea of Indian constitution is again violated here, because the fact of the matter is that not a single rupee in India can be taxed without the consent of the parliament. Live with that, not a single rupee can get into the pocket of anyone except coming into the constituted fund of India that is called as CFI. But here in this case, the APMC mandi taxes are not submitted to the CFI. It does not go into the CFI. Then where it goes? It goes into the pocket of APMC mandi operators. And who are these operators? You can conduct a survey of entire country. These operators are not at all the ordinary farmers. They are politicians. They are big landlords. They are criminals. All right. So these people actually command these APMC in every state of India, wherever the APMC functions. So at the end of the day, who is going to lose if there is a reform in APMC? These big shot people. And this is not the demand of current India. This demand has been there for last so many decades to reform APMC mandis. Fine. So that is one rationality you can understand. Similarly, in Essential Communities Act, of course, in Essential Communities Act also the limit on stocking was imposed just to ensure that there has to be a regular supply of the items in the market and there has to be no artificial scarcity in the market by stocking by someone who wants to earn the profit in this entire particular demand and supply game. So this practice has been now abolished with this law just because of ensuring that there has to be some promotion to the private sectors to come forward to support Indian agriculture. And the fact of the matter is that Indian agriculture needs huge investment, because without investment we cannot develop the logistics for the upstream and backstream linkages. So you require logistics, infrastructure, food godowns, cold storages, etc. And for this, government doesn't have money, or the government doesn't have resources to invest huge sum of money in every state of India. So therefore, it is essential to promote the private sectors to also come forward in terms of investing money, in terms of providing us the infrastructure or logistics to this country. All right. So that is another reason that why it actually had to be abolished, or that it was abolished. or it was changed, amended in that way. Then the third one is contract farming. Now, the contract farming as a practice has been going on in India. It's nothing new. Various states have already introduced contract farming in their own states, including states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, even Punjab. So, contract farming is nothing new in India. It is being done by the private sectors. And there are a number of examples before all of us to quote here. है ना? नहीं तो फिर चिप्स कैसे बनता? ये फास्ट फूड इंडस्ट्री जो है वो कैसे इतना प्रमोट होता है? ये जो एग्रीकल्चर प्रोडक्ट्स जो है, ये जो कहते हैं घर का जो सामान आप और हम खरीदते हैं, पैक्ड फूड्स, वो कैसे आता? वो तो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग से आ रहा है, चारों तरफ जहां से भी आ रहा है वो. तो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग इज नथिंग न्यू फॉर दिस कंट्री. इट वाज ऑलरेडी देयर. Fine. Now it is going to be executed at a national level. That's actually was the issue. It is a model APMC law where the central government allowed the state government to choose whether they want to introduce or they don't want to introduce. So there was a freedom to state government, especially in the context of this model APMC law. But here, what the government has done, government has invoked entry 33 of concurrent list. Now this entry 33 of concurrent list is actually empowering the central government extremely too much, that it can even override the state government's laws regarding all these particular matters and subject. State governments are within their right to actually enact a law pertaining to agriculture. But when it comes to trade, that is interstate and intrastate trade, then of course the central government enjoys the power to legislate on that matter. So it is in this context only the central government enjoys more power in terms of exercising or rather executing these three laws in India. Fine, that is the rationality. And of course, contract farming is also required in India. Why? Because the fact of the matter is that in our country still we are facing a problem on the front of lack of investment in agriculture. And till the time there is no contract farming, it is difficult to expect that there would be a huge capital investment in agriculture. So in that way, in nutshell, the government will not be able to actually improve agriculture without seeking the private sector's participation into it. And at the end of the day, agriculture itself is the biggest private sector of this country. All right, so it is still the biggest private sector in this country. So therefore, it is a private sector where the private corporate sectors are now being invited to invest. However, there have been certain concerns on this bill. So you have to now write the second aspect would be on concerns. Fine. So what are the concerns on this bill? What are the imminent threat on this bill? What are the imminent, you can say, bottlenecks of this bill, of these bills, in fact? So those bottlenecks, those hurdles, those limitations, now you have to raise. So what are the concerns over here? The concerns over here that definitely that there are many farmers, or there have been the farmers union, especially in some pockets of India and some states of India, which are actually opposing these bills on the following lines. So what are the lines? First and foremost is that they are opposing it in the context of having a threat that MSP would be finished. MSP would be finished, and probably because of that, their minimum income would be endangered. All right. So their minimum income would be endangered, and that's actually is the reason that why they want to continue with the same setup the way it was there already in India. Fine. So that is their first and foremost concern. Second concern is absolutely that through the contract farming, there will be a contract between two unequals. there would be a contract between two unequals. One is the poor farmers, another one is the big corporate houses. So in that contract, there are another imminent threats of fear possibilities, and that is that probably the big corporate houses might also occupy the lands of the poor farmers. That is the next important concern. Third important concern, since now there's no limitation on stocking of food materials, so there is always a possibility that these big corporate houses may stock huge amount of foods to create an artificial scarcity, and then thereby selling them again during a time of inflation, just to pocket more and more difference, more and more profit in their pocket. So that is one obvious threat, that is through this particular delimitation of stocking limit on the farmers. Last but not the least, their major concern is that if there would be any dispute between the companies and the farmers, of course, the dispute is going to be entertained by the local SDM court, the administrative court, where they might not get justice the way they have been, or they would be expecting from the SDM court, because of the higher influence of the corporate houses over administration. So that's what actually is another very serious concern about these bills. Now, in this context, there has been a demand of the farmers to abolish all the three bills. Second part is very catchy. Should the bills be abolished? So say there would be two set of opinion regarding that. One, who are the sympathizers with the farmers, they will say yes, it should be abolished immediately. But you have to take a very cautious line of argument over here, because you're going to be a part of bureaucracy, part of the government, so you can't take a particular stand which is against the government. That's one thing. Secondly, you have to take a stand in the context of what does the Indian constitution says about it. What does the Indian constitution say about these three bills? Because that is what actually is the fact. So without having any biasness towards anyone, you must bring the constitutional provisions in terms of justifying your point of opinion. So first and foremost, you will say that agriculture per se is a state subject. And when we say agriculture as a state subject, it means right from the time of sowing the crops till the time of sending it to the APMC, this entire process or these entire passages are understood to be a part of agriculture only in India. So till that time, of course, it is a state government jurisdiction to actually operate upon that. But after this, that is what we say trading of agriculture crops. After this, the central government jurisdiction will fall into line. So by that logic, till this issue of APMC, the central government can only say it is up to the state government whether they want to continue or discontinue APMC. It is up to them. Because this has happened in India. States like Bihar, Kerala, Manipur, Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, they don't have APMC law. So there are states like Bihar, Kerala, Manipur, Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep Islands, they don't have APMC law. So it was not abolished by the central government, it was abolished by the state governments only. So the idea is that till that particular limit, of course, the state government should be given the freedom to actually run the APMC or to abolish the APMC. But after that, of course, when it comes to the issues of, let's say, the contract farming or essential commodities stocking limited act or delimited act, So obviously here the central government has a power to enact the law, and of course that power central government derives from the entry 33 of the concurrent list, because this will allow for a free and fair trade and commerce in India, which comes under the jurisdiction of the central government. All right, so interstate trade comes under the jurisdiction of the central government. So therefore, central government has all the rights to promote the free and fair trade in India. Fine. So with this particular argument, only you can come out with this your solution, and then finally you can recommend that if there are certain concerns in this law, especially in the context of the dispute being heard by the SDM court, of course that can be amended. That can be amended, because if it is a contract law, so even as per the Contract Act of 1872, a person has all the right to approach the judiciary in this country. I mean, you have to give the logic why it should be abolished, why should be given to the judiciary. The logic says that we have 1872 Indian Contract Act, and as per the act, a person has all the rights to approach the arbitrator or the judiciary of India in terms of handling the dispute. So at the max, the government can provide a role of an arbitrator, and then finally afterwards, the matter must go to the judiciary. If there would be any dispute arising between the big corporate houses or corporate houses with the farmers. Fine, that could be one thing. Last but not the least, you can also bring another solution that is out of the box thinking. You can also bring a solution in the context of that why can't we also create an agriculture dispute resolution commission in India. The way we have IRDA, the way we have PFRDA, the way we have TRAI, the way we have RBI, we can always create a regulatory body just to check the malpractices or any evil practices of the corporate houses in the field of agriculture. And then let's have a free and fair competition in India. So that could be another solutions to these all problems. Fine. But abolishing the laws would be slightly detrimental to the parliamentary system of the government of India, in fact. Because this is not a matter of only 3 laws. Various other laws will fall in line. Once the government agrees on this, next argument would be abolish even the law that you have enacted to abolish Article 370. You abolish even CA NRC processes. So there are a lot of laws, there are a lot of issues which keep on cropping up in India for the time being, in fact. That's the reason why abolishing laws will not be a solution. Rather, the concerns in the law and to address them properly with mutual, of course, you can say, understanding, that would be a solution to this particular entire problem. So in nutshell, this is how you have to understand these all issues. ठीक है? तो मैंने एक ओवरऑल आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग समझा दी है, बाकी आंसर्स तो प्रिंटेड मैंने दे ही दिया है पहले से आपको, तो दैट इज मोर देन सफिशिएंट. तो प्रिंटेड आंसर्स और ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ आराम से आंसर लिख सकते हैं. ठीक है. हाँ रोहित पूछिए.
अभी जो रिसेंट डिमांड्स आ रहे हैं, अभी 2-3 दिन से तो बोल रहे हैं ना कि एमएसपी को ऐसे लीगल राइट करवा दो. तो लीगल राइट करवाना,
एमएसपी कैन नेवर बी अ लीगल राइट. MSP can never be a legal right, otherwise it will become a headache for any government, in fact. How can you ensure a minimum income for everyone a legal right? So by that logic, you will have to ensure the same income for also the SME sectors employees, also for the MSMEs employees, and also for the gig economy employees. So by this logic, the government will have to come out with a proposal of the minimum income program for everyone in this country. So there the government will be struck into a quagmire. That's a quagmire. Making MSP a legal right will be a quagmire for the government. So And anyhow, the logic says that when Jha committee recommended for the MSP, he never said it should be made as a legal right for the farmers. And MSP is actually could never be a legal right. The point is that MSP was simply in the context of offering an assurance price for the farmers. It was not a secured price for the farmers. All right. So it was never a secured price for the farmers. It was an assurance that if suppose you are unable to sell the products in the market below or rather above this MSP, then MSP is going to rescue your problem of selling your crops below your cost of production. So that was a sort of a structural insurance product. You can say insurance for the farmers. It was basically insurance for the farmers, not a guarantee of income for the farmers. So there's a difference between insurance and guarantee. Now I take insurance, health insurance, and I can use it only when I feel sick. Or when I felt sick, it doesn't ensure me that even if I don't earn, that insurance will keep me giving me the money every month in my pocket, in my account. It's not like that. So it is just like an insurance sector. It is giving you a security only at the time of crisis. So that message has to be clear, has to be given to the farmers in entirety. Fine. And it's been almost 70 years of running this particular MSP scheme in this country. 70 साल से scheme चल रहा है इंडिया में. It has not introduced wonders in this country. Rather, it has actually made the people also passive recipient of the benefits from the government of India. So the point is that we need to now invest more money upon infrastructure. It can only be done if we are able to save money through the MSP. Fine, MSP is needed only for supporting the farmers when they come under a deep crisis, maybe due to the glut in the economy. Glut. When there's a glut in the economy, the prices fall down, and then finally MSP should come as a rescue. But what has happened today now in India? Farmers receive an assured price without even bothering about, without even struggling about, without even taking pain to sell the products in the mandi, in the market in that way. Fine. So it is actually making the farmers a passive recipient of the doles and the benefits of the government. But now you have to put a limit to it. All right, there's always a limit to everything, in fact. When people are leaving the subsidies through the quitting process, of course, we have to also identify the farmers, or if the government can also identify the farmers that who are eligible for the subsidies under the MSP, who are not eligible for subsidies under MSP. And at the same time, you know that there has always been a problem of the WTO regarding the subsidies on MSP, especially in the context of the amber box. Fine, because MSP is a form of direct subsidies, and in any circumstance, WTO does not support the concept of direct subsidies, neither for the developed, not for even for developing countries. Fine. So amber box is the same provision under which everyone is bound to eliminate the direct subsidies gradually. Fine. That is the point. ठीक है, तो ये समझना है पूरे इश्यूज के ऊपर. फाइन
सर. स्वामीनाथन कमेटी ने भी रिकमेंड नहीं किया था ना ये स्टैट्यूटरी करने के लिए इसको?
नहीं, नेवर.
ठीक है सर.
No committee has recommended till now to make it statutory. स्टैट्यूटरी बना देंगे तो फिर तो दिक्कत ही हो जाएगी. ठीक है.
और इसमें ऐसे भी होता है ना कि इनको एमएसपी से कम भी बेचना पड़ता है अपना सामान, तो वो केस में सर ये अभी एफसीआई उनसे एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते, बिकॉज वो बोलते हैं कि उनके पास सामान पूरा अभी जगह नहीं है. तो ये भी सुना है ना सर केसेस की एफसीआई वाले एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते उनके क्रॉप्स को, बोल के कि हम लोग का पहले से ही वी आर ओवर बर्डन विद दिस क्रॉप्स, so they have to sell the crops below MSP. That is what the whole scenario is. So उस केस में सर फिर MSP का तो कोई, because I think वो शायद से मैंने पढ़ा था कि it is not instead of becoming the minimum price, it has become the maximum ceiling for the farmers now.
That is true. I mean, idea is that even for the FCI, they have only the capacity of keeping the food stocks up to 60 million tons at one point of time. Now 60 million tons of food grains they can store. That's actually the maximum capacity of their food stocks limit, in fact. Now, of course, when they find that, of course, people are there, farmers are there to sell the crops, and this is already beyond their capacity, they don't go for that unless and until there's a pressure from the government or politician side. In fact, in that way, because it has been seen in India also that in the past also they have also procured more food grains beyond their capacity of storing that. So they had to go for open storage facilities in which a lot of crops have also got, let's say, vanished because of the rainfall or the water logging over there. So because of these factors, the food grains have also got, let's say, vanished, in fact, in India. And at the same time, there have been also the instances where they have hired the private godowns for stocking the food grains. And for that also, they have been paying the huge rents. So it becomes a double whammy for the government. At one hand, they have paid huge money to the farmers in terms of procuring those food grains, and then now they're paying for the rent. The rent also to the private godowns, private cold storages to store the food grains for their longevity. So that's what actually there's a huge problem in this particular business altogether. Fine, and of course there's always an element of corruption that is already known by all of us. Santa Kumar committee has already recommended about this particular issue. करप्शन बहुत ज्यादा है, इसको खत्म करो. उन्होंने पहले कह दिया था कि एफसीआई को बंद करो और ये भी खत्म करो. प्रोक्योरमेंट डिसेंट्रलाइज कर दो आप. There should not be a centralized procurement now in India. And it's a good exercise, in fact. Let me tell you, it's a good exercise that let's decentralize the procurement process altogether. Let the state government procure it from the farmers, from their own farmers. Because depending upon the, let's say, the people who are falling into the category of food insecurity, a state government knows better than the central government, in fact, in that way. The data with the central government might be fudged one, might not be accurate one, but the state government must be knowing about the exact number of people, exact percentage of people who are actually falling into the category of, let's say, the food insecure population in their state. So accordingly, they can fetch the products from their farmers under their own state MSP, and they can store it. Rather to have a centralized storage process, it has to be always decentralized one. Centralized only the government can act in the context of supporting it to the big army and the paramilitary forces which are stationed on the border and the remote areas. ठीक है, तो उसके लिए सेंट्रलाइज कर सकती है सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट कि वहां पे उनकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. लेकिन स्टेट वाइज तो ऑफ कोर्स state government should take the onus of maintaining enough of food stocks in that way. ठीक है, so that is actually the idea, in fact.
क्लोज्ड एंडेड करने के लिए भी बोला ना सर,
क्या
प्रोक्योरमेंट
क्या
क्लोज्ड एंडेड प्रोक्योरमेंट होना चाहिए.
क्लोज एंडेड
Open it.
प्रोक्योरमेंट होना चाहिए. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल ठीक है.
And plus, it can also help for the previous.
Pardon? Not listening. हाँ, क्या क्या बोले?
So it can also help for PDS, public distribution system, because anyhow we are trying to shift with the help of Aadhaar. We are trying to send the money directly to the bank account so that they can from the market.
We are acting upon that. So probably it may take another 2 to 3 years more when we will shift to the PDS system in the context of DBT, direct benefit transfer. All right. So that may also happen sooner or later in India. But till the time this issue of food insecurity is not actually addressed, and that too not only food insecurity, the point is in India has become in the context of malnutrition. So now we are talking about new concepts of how to ensure these malnourished people, malnourished children and women, in fact, in India, with proper food material. So we have started talking about food fortification and other concepts also now in India. So that is actually another big challenge for the government. That's the reason why the government is actually delaying this process of going for DBT for the PDS. All right. That is actually a challenge. So let's see how the government meets these challenges in near future. Fine. So let us discuss.
So in short run,
tell me.
Sir, in short run, how will the farm bills will impact the PDS? Because अगर ये contract farming अगर large scale पे हो गया, तो ये तो पीडीएस पे तो इफेक्ट करेगा ना ये.
So that's the reason why, when even if it is a contract farming, it will become an onus of the government to procure those amount of food grains. But here the government will procure it from the open market. So the government will also become a buyer in the open market, or else the government will may start employing some farmers also for the government farming, the way it is done in communist states. So that could be one possibilities. But the idea is the government will not employ them to do the farming for the government. Rather, the government will start procuring from the open market. All right. So government will have to spend more money for that purpose. That's the reason why after that the government it will be left with one option. The government will stop procuring the food grains, and then finally government will give the money into the hand of the customers or the consumers through a DBT, and will ask them to procure it from the open market. That is going to happen now in India. That's actually a reform towards that direction only. Fine. So this is what actually is going to happen in the near future. Fine. Okay, this next question is, you can read next one.
Discuss the key proposals of the tax code. What are its challenges in India?
Yes. So direct tax code. Now see, one thing is this, that the proposals of the latest committee has not been made public. Achilles Ranjan task force or tax panel, in fact, their recommendations are with the government only, but it has not been made public till now. That is one thing. Second aspect. Now, even though this committees or this panel recommendation has not come down into the public domain, even though in the past there have been various efforts taken by various committees, like the first committee which recommended for direct tax code was the Vijay Kelkar committee. Vijay Kelkar committee 2002 and 2009. It was constituted in 2 years, 2002 and 2009, and it was in 2002 and 2009, in both these years, Vijay Kelkar committee had recommended a reform in the areas of direct and indirect taxes. In the field of direct tax, it recommended for direct tax code, and in the field of indirect taxes, it recommended for the goods and services tax, which already has been now implemented. Fine. So Vijay Kelkar had recommended about direct tax code in that way, and now in that recommendations only, the key proposals were on almost all the dimensions of direct tax. So I again would give you one mantra to remember such kind of questions very easily. Suppose you don't remember the key proposals exactly, but you have to write an answer. How would you write an answer? First and foremost, one thing that you need to now understand, you have to apply your smart sense, that it is pertaining to the issue of direct tax code. It means it must be encompassing almost all the areas of direct taxes. Then what are the direct taxes in India? Direct taxes include personal income tax, corporation tax, isn't it? Fringe benefit tax, minimum alternative tax, dividend distribution tax, gift tax. अब आप देखिए कि आपके पास 6-7 तो टैक्सेस ऐसे ही याद हो गए आपको. अब ये हर टैक्स के ऊपर कुछ न कुछ इसमें रिकमेंडेशन है या किया गया है. जैसे पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स के स्लैब्स में चेंजेस की बात की गई है, 3 स्लैब्स करने की बात की गई है, 55 लाख रुपए तक का एग्जेम्पशन देने की बात कही गई है. So that's what actually is another issue. You can now see. Fine. So the idea is that they have talked about the reform in the personal income tax. Second, they have also talked about reform in the corporation tax to bring it down to the global level of OECD countries. Now, in the OECD countries, the corporation taxes are charged between 18 to 22%. 18 से 22% है, सबसे कम है न्यूजीलैंड में. ठीक है. सो ओईसीडी कंट्रीज के जो लेवल है उस पे लाना है, और ऑलरेडी अभी 25% टैक्स किया गया हुआ है कॉर्पोरेशन टैक्स, जो कि इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे बहुत क्लोज है. ठीक है. सो इट एक्चुअली हैज इंप्रूव्ड इंडियाज ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस इंडेक्स रैंक आल्सो. क्या रैंक है अभी इंडिया का? 63 या 64? क्या 63 है?
62 सर.
62
यस सर.
ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस इंडेक्स 62 है अभी इंडिया का.
63 होना चाहिए सर.
63 है शायद.
77 लास्ट ईयर था.
हाँ 77 लास्ट ईयर था, इस बार 63 हुआ है.
63 सर.
हाँ एक बार चेक कर लीजिएगा, ये सब थोड़ा डाटा याद रखना है ना. तो खैर, तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि
60
हाँ इन सारे मुद्दे पर बात करना है. सिमिलरली इट हैज आल्सो रिकमेंडेड टू रिफॉर्म द टैक्स लाइक मैट. अभी क्या है कि मिनिमम अल्टरनेटिव टैक्स किस पे लगता है? बुक प्रॉफिट पे लगता है. ठीक है. आई होप ऑल ऑफ यू आर अवेयर ऑफ मैट होता क्या है. ठीक है. तो इट अप्लाइज अपॉन द बुक प्रॉफिट. Now it has been recommended for the net turnover. The net turnover should be set as a criteria to charge a tax under MAT on the zero-based companies. Okay, so that is another recommendations. Then similarly, dividend distribution tax has to be also abolished. DDT. Gift tax also has to be abolished. Fine. So you can now understand these are the key proposals on the direct tax code, and the fact of the matter is that for direct taxes we have multiple laws in India. Laws are different for the personal income tax, different from the gift tax. Fine. So obviously there are multiple laws to govern the direct taxes in India, and that actually creates a problem for the tax authorities to actually decide about the tax amount from the SSC properly. And because of this factor only, there are millions of tax petitions, tax cases are still pending in different courts of laws in India. And that is still causing huge revenue, huge investment, because you need to understand these income tax offices also need to hire lawyers, and they have to pay huge amount of money for these lawyers. And you know how the cases go on in India. It goes for, let's say, years and years. So in that scenario, of course, they are also bearing a huge financial burden in not only in filing the cases against the SSC, but also fighting against them for the entire, let's say, duration. So in that way, of course, there has been a proposal to reform this direct tax process altogether, to simplify the law, because laws were enacted as per the British laws. Even in 1961, the Income Tax Act of 1961 was also enacted on the basis of what was there in the British laws. So Income Tax Act 61 or maybe 2020, there's a huge gap. So we have to reform it. Okay. So in that way, the direct tax code needs to be reformed. That's what actually is the basic fundamental things. But the challenges to this is what? The basic challenge of this is that it is not so simple to reform all the laws to simplify the legal provisions of all the various types of direct taxes in India. Therefore, it is taking much time in India We have seen Vijay Kelkar committee recommending it. We have seen afterwards also Arvind Modi committee came into picture. Arvind Modi was the first committee constituted by this government in 2016. Arvind Modi could not simplify the entire laws properly as per the government satisfaction, perhaps. So he was replaced by Akhilesh Ranjan committee. All right. So the idea is that we have seen the committees in the past. They have been struggling in terms of giving a satisfactory proposals of the direct tax code to the government. That is one challenge with the government. Second challenge is absolutely what will happen to those cases which have already been filed in different courts of law. Those cases are also worth of billions of dollars for the government. So what would be the consequences of the new direct tax code on those cases, in fact? Thirdly, of course, the training of the staff, because in this one of the proposals of direct tax code is also the having faceless assessment of the assessees. So how the staff would be trained to provide this faceless assessment of the assessees? That's another big challenge for the government. So training is again a challenge for the government in that way. Fine. And last but not the least, that of course, since there are multiple taxes involved in direct tax, to simplify them under one code would be a mammoth task for any committee in India. Fine. And perhaps we should learn something from GST, that goods and services tax was implemented in haste, and that again has created ripples in the market. So probably we should not rush for DTC immediately. We should take some more time in terms of implementing the DTC with the full satisfaction of all the stakeholders who are going to be part of this DTC. That should be a conclusion, in fact, in that way. ठीक है, तो ये सिनेरियो इसके अंदर इसको लिखना था आंसर्स. ठीक है
सर इसमें जो सेकंड पार्ट है चैलेंजेस का,
हाँ बताइए.
उसमें सर ऐसे सब कैटेगराइज कर सकते हैं कि पॉलिटिकल चैलेंज है, कि पॉलिटिकल पुशबैक हो सकता है, या फिर सोशल चैलेंज है कि लोग ज्यादा लिटरेट नहीं है तो उनको अवेयरनेस नहीं होगा उसके बारे में, नए लॉस के बारे में, जैसे जीएसटी में हुआ था. तो ऐसी चीजें हम लोग ऐसे सब हेडिंग में डिवाइड कर सकते हैं.
बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं, क्यों नहीं कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि इसमें तो है ही पॉलिटिकल चैलेंज भी है, डायरेक्ट टैक्स कोड का पॉलिटिकल चैलेंज भी है, इसका इकोनॉमिक चैलेंज भी है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे कंपनीज का डिमांड था कि आप जो है मैट एबॉलिश कर दीजिए, मैट हैज टू बी एबॉलिश्ड. ठीक है, so that was demand of the many of the companies have been demanding to reduce even the corporate tax below 20% or around 20% in fact. So that is another demand of the companies in that way. Fine. Even after that there would be some social consequences also. So of course वो financial literacy or social awareness कितना है, that's going to also be another issue with this DTC. ठीक है, वो भी कर सकते हैं, ऐसे भी कर सकते हैं challenges of categorized.
सर एक चैलेंज ये है कि डायरेक्ट टैक्स एंड इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स का रेशियो 70:30 होना चाहिए, जो होना चाहिए सर. इंडिया में अभी है वो अराउंड 50% है सर. सो हम अगर डायरेक्ट टैक्स रिफॉर्म करेंगे तो ऑलरेडी ये रेशियो से बिगड़ जाएगा, क्योंकि
बिल्कुल. देखिए ऐसा है ना कि अगर आप when you compare Indian economy with the American economy, that's complete contrast over there. We actually have been dependent upon more upon, in fact, I would say, on the indirect taxes rather than direct taxes. So as you said that yes, it was right that in India in 1990s it was 70-30%, or the ratio was there for the indirect and direct taxes in this country, which was just reverse to the American concept. अमेरिका वगैरह में डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस कलेक्शन ज्यादा है than indirect taxes, and the fact of the matter is that indirect taxes does not discriminate between the payers, the assessee. चाहे वह गरीब हो चाहे अमीर हो, सबको पे करना है indirect taxes. So therefore indirect taxes are basically highly, I would say, unethical in any part of the world. because a person who may not be also very comfortable, yet he has to pay a tax because he has to consume that item. On the other hand, direct taxes, of course, it actually has a discriminatory power in terms of choosing that who is eligible to pay, who is not eligible to pay. तो डायरेक्ट टैक्स पे शिफ्ट करना ज्यादा हमेशा फायदेमंद होगा, बट एट द सेम टाइम विद दिस ऑल राइडर्स इन फैक्ट इन दैट वे, ठीक है, कि ऐसा फिर से ना हो जाए, उधर की तरफ ना चला जाए, ठीक है। तो ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट डायमेंशन है डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस का, ठीक है। ओके नाउ
तो ये विवाद से विश्वास स्कीम भी वन ऑफ द डायरेक्ट डीटीसी के तरफ ही काम करने का ये तरीका है ना सर?
हाँ, मतलब इसमें वही है कि जो लीगल डिस्प्यूट्स है, चाहे वो डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस के हों, वो उसको हम बिना कह सकते जुडिशरी को अप्रोच किए हुए म्यूचुअल कंसेंट से हम उसको सॉर्ट आउट कर लें, जिसमें बिना पेनाल्टी और बिना इंटरेस्ट के यू कैन पे योर all those liabilities which was actually assessed by any SSC of assessment officer in fact in the past. That's what actually is that scheme, ठीक है। तो उस तरह से ये भी उसी का एक कहते हैं कि एक प्रोविजन है जो कि इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा रहा है आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स बाय द गवर्नमेंट, राइट।
इसको कंक्लूजन में लिख सकते हैं ना इस केस में? लिख
सकते हैं, क्यों नहीं लिख सकते हैं कि द गवर्नमेंट हैज डन वेरी नोवेल इनिशिएटिव रिसेंटली. Of course, it can be seen as an influencing factor also from the direct tax code proposals. Okay. Okay, read the next question.
Why the fuller capital account convertibility has not been adopted by India? What are its benefits and challenges?
See, question is fuller capital account convertibility. It means that capital account convertibility must have been adopted by the government. All right. So, of course, outrightly, you have to start with the Tarapur committee only. So, you have to start with the Tarapur committee. The Tarapur committee was constituted in 2006, and which, of course, recommended in favor of fuller capital account convertibility. Fine. And again, it was constituted in 2008. So in 2006 and 1997, these are 2 years in which it was constituted. So in 2006 again it was constituted, and this was second time it was constituted, again recommended in favor of fuller capital account convertibility. Fine. So that is the Tarapur committee's recommendations. But the point is that first of all we have to understand why it has recommended and why India has not adopted it. So this committee recommended this particular fuller capital account convertibility under the impact of globalization. It is a fait accompli for India. Article 8 of the IMF. So Article 8 of the IMF mandates a country which has accepted IMF provisions to allow a fuller capital account convertibility, under which a country's currency is exchangeable to any other currencies of the world and vice versa. Vice versa simply means that if Indian rupee is convertible into any other currencies of the foreign countries, similarly, any foreign currencies in India would be allowed to be convertible at the market rate. So if someone is bringing, let's say, yen or yuan or let's say euro, so those people are actually having the power to convert it into the Indian rupee at the market rate and vice versa. ठीक है, तो कोई भी करेंसी लेके कोई भी यहाँ आ सकता है, जा सकता है. That's what actually is the point under the fuller capital account convertibility. ठीक है, so that is what actually has been the demand. Now, Tarapur committee recommended it's a fait accompli because India has signed Article 8 of the IMF. And as per the Article 8 of the IMF, a country can't restrain on the issue of convertibility, on the issue of the free movement of the investment, the goods and services in any part of the country. So already Indian government has allowed the goods and services to be fully convertible at the market rate under the current account convertibility. Now it is in the context of the investment of the foreign capital which India has to now allow it fully. India does permit the convertibility of foreign capital also in India, but that is actually limited. That is actually limited. For example, let's say the ECB, external commercial borrowings. Now there is a limit to ECBs in India. India can't import or can't actually borrow above 300 billion in particular year, in 1 year. And RBI is responsible to control the ECB in India. So in nutshell, the idea is this is how capital account convertibility has already been allowed, but only partially, not fully. We have allowed FDI in various sectors 100%. That is partial. There's a partial capital account convertibility in that way. Fine. So these are the in fact aspects of current capital account convertibility. So why India has not adopted it? Because of various concerns on that. And the basic concern is the international experience with the capital account convertibility. Now, capital account convertibility was adopted by many countries in the world in 1990s, including the four Asian tigers. Four Asian tigers: Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong. Now, these four countries adopted fuller capital account convertibility, and with this, they witnessed a huge development in their economies. But in 1997, all of a sudden, due to the hot money, the outflow of hot money from their economy, they declined, or in fact, the share market collapsed. So it became a notion of the fall of Asian tigers of 1997. Same situation happened in Argentina, followed by even Russia and some other countries also of the world. So there are international experiences which actually have restricted the government of India to go for fuller capital account convertibility, despite the fact that Tarapur committee had recommended in favor of this, in support of this. So government of India had not chosen for that. That's one thing. Secondly, internally also there are certain macroeconomic indicators of the government of India which are not sound. Macroeconomic indicators like fiscal deficit, inflation, current account deficit. So if these are not still sound, then still government of India can't go for the fuller capital account convertibility. Thirdly, the banking sectors, financial institutions, and their rising NPAs, non-performing assets. So till the time the banking sectors and their NPAs are not controlled, the government can't go for fuller capital account convertibility. Because जब पैसा आपके पास आएगा तो सब कुछ अच्छा लगेगा, और जो पैसा आएगा आपके पास वो पैसा बैंक कहीं ना कहीं और भी इन्वेस्ट करेगी, तब तक तो सब कुछ ठीक लगेगा, सब कुछ हैंकी डोरी लगेगा इंडिया में, एवरीथिंग गोइंग ऑन हैंकी डोरी. बट द डे व्हेन दे विल स्टार्ट माइग्रेटिंग फ्रॉम इंडिया, उस दिन बैंक दिवालिया हो जाएगा अगर उसके पास सफिशिएंट पैसा और सफिशिएंट बैलेंस नहीं है तो. So that's the reason why we will have to find out a solution to that. So obviously the benefits are multiple. Benefits are basically in the context of having huge investment in your economy. Multinational companies of every country in the world will come to India. अभी कहां से आते हैं मैक्सिमम? अभी आते हैं साउथ कोरिया, जापान, यूरोप और अमेरिका से बस. बाद में कहां से आएंगे? ये अर्जेंटीना से भी आएंगे, ये ऑस्ट्रेलिया से भी आएंगे, ये मंगोलिया से भी आएंगे, ये रशिया से भी आएंगे, सारे सबसे आएंगे. तो ऑफकोर्स वो बेनिफिट है आपके लिए. Fine. So with the investment from all these countries, you will get the huge development. That's for sure. At the same time, India requires investment in infrastructure, India requires investment in various other economic structure. It will also create employment. It will also bring, let's say, technology. It will also bring private efficiency in various, you can say, production processes. It will also introduce very easily opening of world market for Indian goods. Very easily. कुछ नहीं करना होगा, अपने आप सारे मार्केट ओपन हो जाएंगे सरकार इंडिया के गुड्स के लिए. वो सारे ऑप्शंस हैं, लेकिन चैलेंजेस भी बहुत हैं. और सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है कि इंडियन बैंकिंग सिनेरियो इज नॉट साउंड. India's financial institutions positions are not sound. With the decline of ILFS, with the rising NPAs of various banks in the past, it is not the high time to actually introduce fuller capital account convertibility. And very rightly, A.V. Rajwade said, A.V. Rajwade was an economist who said that the benefits are only possible, but risks are always obvious with fuller capital account convertibility. Benefits are always obvious, benefits are always possible, but risks are always obvious in fuller capital account convertibility. तो उनका मानना है, उनका कहना था कि बेनिफिट्स जो है वो पॉसिबल है, हो सकता है आपको मिले इसका फायदा, लेकिन इसका रिस्क आपको पक्का मिलेगा. बेनिफिट हो ना हो उसमें कुछ डाउट हो सकता है, लेकिन रिस्क तो होगा ही होगा, उसमें कोई डाउट नहीं है. And then he cited an example of China. The China, even going for fuller current account convertibility, China has been the biggest attractor of the foreign direct investment into their own economy. So China has not gone for even fuller current account convertibility, leave capital account. Yet it has turned out to be the biggest attractor, biggest puller of the global investors in China. Why? So answer lies in the fact that you build up your infrastructure, you train your staff, you train your human skills or human labor force, you provide the world a cheapest market, you provide sound infrastructure of import export. आप कोई भी conditions लगाइएगा फिर भी आपके investment होगा. That is what actually the Chinese model is all about. ठीक है, even being a communist state, no big private company fears to go to China, because private companies, they love to be in capitalist country. Yet they go to China only because of these factors. They hardly bother about the Chinese ideology. Fine. So that should actually is the answer over here.
So, sir, so in nutshell, the fuller capital account convertibility is a peak of LPG, right?
That would be the final stage of LPG. उसके बाद कुछ नहीं बचता है आपको रोकने और ना रोकने का. तब आपको सिंपल उसके बाद आएगा कहानी आप क्रिप्टो करेंसीज का. Then the next challenge for the government would be cryptocurrencies. How to check that? All right. So that would be the next challenge. बस ये final stage है उसका, highest stage है उसका. ठीक है. Okay, read the next question. It's a simple one.
Should India adopt inclusiveness of everyone in the economic development? What are its major bottlenecks?
So you have to simply write about that. Yes, India has to include everyone in the economic development because of these factors. First is that, of course, there are various sections of population who are politically deprived, economically sidelined, socially also marginalized. So, of course, in that context, we will have to include everyone in economic development. Second, if economic development is not inclusive, it will lead to the strain or stress in the society. So there would be more cases of caste-based discrimination, more cases of community-based discrimination, more cases of communal violence, rise of communalism, more cases of regionalism, son of the soil movements. All right. So these things will keep increasing in India. These are all things you have to write here, in fact, in this answer. Then second aspect is major bottlenecks of inclusiveness in India. So what are major bottlenecks? The biggest bottleneck is lack of political intent in this country. The biggest bottleneck is lack of political willingness to bring inclusiveness in this country. Second is absolutely lack of capital with this state. Because to bring inclusiveness, you will have to improve infrastructure first. स्कूल बनाना पड़ेगा हर जगह, हॉस्पिटल्स खोलने पड़ेंगे हर जगह, रोड बनाने पड़ेंगे हर जगह, बिजली पानी सब जगह मुहैया करवाना पड़ेगा, तो तभी इंक्लूसिवनेस आएगा ना. So of course for that you need huge investment. There's no doubt about it, and that becomes a major bottleneck in that way. Fine. Thirdly, of course, corruption, leakages, the collusion between the politicians, criminals, and the bureaucrats in India. So because of that also, the money is not going to the hand of the real beneficiaries. That is another major bottleneck for the inclusiveness. Fourthly, last but not the least, of course, is skill. So skill training is still a major bottleneck to bring inclusiveness in India. So skill training भी डालना है, ठीक है? So these are the things which you have to include here. So ये simple question था, तो आराम से आप लिख सकते थे, और लिखा भी आप लोगों ने अच्छे से. Next question you read. Let's move fastly because it's already 11:15.
Privatization has its own merits and demerits. In the light of the statement, examine the reasons for privatization of various PSUs in recent times.
So say you have to only write the merits and demerits, and then some examples of recent time, like of course this what do you say, BPCL and this Shipping Corporation India Limited. So there are just few examples in the recent times of privatization. So there are merits and demerits also of this privatization. One thing that almost all of you had missed out of privatization in terms of demerit, it was that privatization always involved the ethical dimension. And what is that ethical dimension? Ethical dimension is actually in the context of that you are selling the public assets into the hand of the government, into the hand of the private sectors in India. And these public assets are actually owned by the public of this country. And by the constitutional provision, the owner of these public assets is President of India, in whose the final authority of republic is lying in this country. So in nutshell, you are selling out the public assets into the hand of private sector, and these public assets have been created by the taxpayers' money. Fine. So it belongs to everyone in this country. So that is an ethical dimension in the context of privatization. In fact, that is the biggest demerit in that way. Then you have merit and demerit in the context of that how it brings efficiency, technology, investment, and employment opportunities, isn't it? Competition in the economy. With the competition, rising competition, you also bring the best of the products at the cheapest rate for the consumers also in the economy. But at the same time, with the competition, you also face a problem of even unethical practices by the private sectors. So these all things you can include very easily in the context of the merit and demerit. ठीक है, तो ये लिखना था इसके ऊपर. और रीजंस क्या है प्राइवेटाइजेशन को वेरियस पीएसयूज के लिए? तो रीजंस ये है कि why the government is hell bent for privatization or rather going for privatization. So see, there are many reasons behind that. One of the reasons could be also ideological. So if there's a right wing government, of course they will try to privatize more and more. That's one aspect. Secondly, government needs money, revenue to spend, and these revenues the government can of course collect through the taxable and non-taxable proceeds. Now if there's a limitation in taxable proceeds, the government is only left with the non-taxable proceeds. In the non-taxable proceeds, privatization or disinvestment comes as a major rescue for the government, because it becomes a part of the capital income for the government. All right. So in that way, this capital income for the government will also bring down the fiscal deficit of the government. Fine. So this is how the government actually gains a lot of benefits through the privatization. That's the reason why the government is going for privatization also at the same time. And saying the recent scenario of economy, the government is in dire need of money, excessive need of money because of lack of tax collection, poor tax collection under the lockdown period. The government doesn't have enough of monies, and that's what actually government is actually hell bent for privatization, so that the government can get the money to spend on various other essential items without even jeopardizing the FRBM law and its spirit. Fine. That would be the last recourse for the government in terms of forgetting what is fiscal deficit and what is FRBM law. ठीक है. Okay, so now read the next question.
What do you mean by the term bank recapitalization? How far is it effective in addressing the bank stress in India?
See, bank recapitalization, that it's a very, old process. It has been done at various occasions in India. But in recent times, it was done under the in the Dhanush scheme. If you remember, in 2015, it was actually introduced by the then Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was there. So, in the Dhanush scheme, included the process of recapitalization along with other aspects of reforms and other aspects of economic revival of the banking sectors in India. So bank recapitalization simply means infusing more capital into the bank's account. So infusing more capital into the account of the bank, that is the meaning of bank recapitalization. All right. So that is bank recapitalization in that way. All right. Now, how far is it effective in addressing the bank stress in India? You have to only understand that it is only a short-term recourse. A short-term recourse to actually address the stress of NPAs of the banks to continue its working, continue its functioning for the time being, so that it can revive back, it can bounce back in the system. So that is how it is effective to that extent. But the point is that we introduced the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, IBC code, and under the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, it was primarily meant to serve the interests of the banking sectors. However, it landed up to serve the interests of the corporate houses more in India. ठीक है, तो आईबीसी लाया गया था इसी स्ट्रेस को कम करने के लिए बैंकिंग सेक्टर्स के लिए इनफैक्ट, लेकिन कॉर्पोरेट हाउसेस को ज्यादा फायदा मिल गया. Fine. So in nutshell, we have to understand that bank recapitalization is only a short-term measure, whereas the long-term and medium-term measure includes the reform in the bank as per the Narasimhan Committee 1 and 2 recommendations. All right, Narasimhan Committee जरूर लाइएगा जब भी आपको बैंक रिफॉर्म्स की बात करनी है तो. So Narasimhan Committee's 1 and 2 recommendations, which may include the merger of banks, creation of hierarchy in banks, like there should be some international banks in India, some national banks, and some state-wise banks in India. So these are the long-term reforms to improve the banking structure in this country. Fine. Apart from introducing the mandatory prudential norms in the bank. The prudential norms बैंक को mandatorily ही implement करना है, ये भी आपको recommend कर देना है इसमें. Then next question is on 13. 15. Now, read 15 number.
The regulation and supervision of the financial system in India is carried out by different regulatory authorities. In the light of the above observation, critically examine the challenges of the financial system and how it can be remedied.
So see, this is an open-ended question. I mean, you can write like anything in this question. The open-ended question, why? Because You can include a lot of things in this Indian financial system. You have banking, you have insurance sector, you have, of course, the short-term investment sector, all right, provident fund sector. So these all sectors could be included as a part of the financial system. And every sector has its set of challenges. Fine, and every sector has not only set of challenges but also set of solutions for that. तो आपको इसमें पूरा ओपन एंडेड क्वेश्चन था, इसमें आराम से आप लिख सकते थे, स्ट्रक्चर क्लियर करके लिखना था, ठीक है. एंड आई थिंक आई सॉ रोहित आंसर, इट वाज फाइन, ठीक है. वो स्ट्रक्चर क्लियर कट लिख के आपने लिखा था आंसर, तो इसमें बहुत ज्यादा बताने को है नहीं. इट इज ऑलरेडी वेरी क्लियरली डिफाइंड देयर इन द आंसर आल्सो. स्ट्रक्चर इज वेरी क्लियर इन दिस मैनर ओनली, कि आपको सारा फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम के बारे में लिख के और फिर बताना था उसके अंदर. So last, I think last two questions we are left with. Yes. So this is another question, but you can read.
What do you mean by agricultural
What do you-
value chain? Discuss its challenges and opportunities in India.
Right. So agriculture value chain includes both the backstream and upstream linkages. In fact, all right. So it includes the linkages right from the storage capacity to the processing unit, to the to the link of the processing unit, to the extent of also including the level of the consumers. That's the reason why agriculture value chain is defined as the linkages that establishes the link between farm and the folk. Farm and the folk. That is how agriculture value chain is defined as. All right. So when you have a smooth link between the farm and the folk, that is defined as a part of agriculture value chain. Fine. Challenges are multiple at every level. For example, one of the challenges at the level of linking the agriculture products to the market is the APMC law. So in the upstream linkage, APMC law is the biggest challenge. Fine. And in the downstream linkage, the FDI law or FDI policy on agriculture and agriculture marketing system is another major challenge in the country. तो दो मेजर चैलेंज है, याद रखना है. एक APMC law itself is a major challenge for the upstream linkage. For the downstream linkage, it is the FDI policy in agriculture is a major challenge, because we have not allowed FDI policy fully on agriculture till now. All right, we have allowed FDI in processing units. We have allowed FDI in, let's say, allied activities of agriculture. We have allowed FDI in some cash crops in agriculture, like tea plantation, horticulture, etc. But not in pure farming activity. FDI is not allowed. So obviously that is still a challenge in this country. Because of lack of that, we are unable to improve upon logistics. We are unable to improve upon the transportation system that support our logistics, the storage houses that support our logistics, the trained staff that can handle the food materials cleanly. There's also part of logistics. So these things, and not only that, even the aspect of even the institutions which can verify the authenticity of the product, the purity of the product. We don't have those number of good institutions in this country the way it is there in America or Europe. We have only one institution that is called FSSAI. Now the Food Safety and Security Authority of India. Now FSSAI, that is responsible only for examining the food, of course, you can say purity in this country, and we have only a system of AgMark on certain items. But on the processed items, the FSSAI approval is essentially required in India. And how many chemical labs they do have? Of course, not even more than 30 in entire country. So now you can understand a country having a production of, let's say, more than 300 million tons of food grains. And out of the 300 million tons of food grains, at least 200 million tons of food grains are processed also in this country. And we have only 30 labs to actually evaluate and examine their production and their entire processing. So itself, it shows a big limitation in this country. ठीक है, इसलिए इंडिया का प्रोडक्ट बहुत जगह तो अप्रूव भी नहीं होता है बेचने लायक भी नहीं होता है, अप्रूव ही नहीं करते बेचने लायक कि प्रोडक्ट में मिलावट होगी या है भी, ठीक है. So this is all about Indian products in that way. So these are the challenges which you have to write, but opportunities are also very much, because India is known for the production of variety of food grains and other allied products, horticulture and even animal products. But we need what? We need the labs, we need the proper abattoirs, we need to improve our value chain system. All right. So National Mission of Food Processing we had launched in 2015. Fine. So we need to improve upon that, and this is how things can be improved further in India. Fine. So this is a part of internal security question.
Sir,
Huh.
I think question number 17 is pending, sir.
Which one?
Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Okay. So this is another question. You can read the question, the last question.
From growth contraction to rising inflation and unemployment have emerged as a major challenges to the economy. In the light of this, critically examine the announcement of Atmanirbhar Bharat by the government of India.
See, there are three things that you have to understand here. First one is that there is a contraction of the GDP growth in India. Second one is there's a impact of that in the context of rising inflation also in India. And third one is there's also the issue of unemployment in India. Now, if you go by this logic, the growth contraction has already been interpreted by various agencies that Indian growth has contracted in the last 1 year to more than 12% in that way. Inflation has also risen up to more than 8% again, especially food inflation I'm talking about. Even on consumer price index, it has increased to more than 6 to 7% around. Fine. And on the other hand, unemployment is also at a higher end, in fact, higher you can say range, in fact. It is also around 11% if you go by the latest data of CMIE, because government of India has not released data regarding unemployment. So CMIE data also indicates the unemployment is also at the highest level of 11% in that way. Fine. So now these are the facts before all of us. Now, under this fact, of course, we can simply understand that India is witnessing a problem of stagflation, a problem of the hyperinflation also probably in the context of food items. So obviously, in the context of that only, the challenges of economy have emerged tremendously, that too in the light of the COVID-19 and its impact. Therefore, to address it, the government has come out with the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. And since you have to do a critical examination of this, so what you have to do, you have to write down the provisions of Atmanirbhar Bharat program, especially in the context of the areas where it is going to bring a reform, a change, in fact, in India. And then you have to do a critical examination in terms of also highlighting the shortcomings of Atmanirbhar Bharat program. Fine. And the major shortcoming is still in the context of the government of India is not realizing the fact that till the time demand is not actually improved, we will not be able to improve upon the supply side in this country. But there has to be a very basic understanding of a balance and equilibrium between demand and supply. Right now, the point is the government of India through Atmanirbhar Bharat program is working primarily upon the supply side by incentivizing the MSMEs, by incentivizing the corporate sectors, by incentivizing the business houses, and of course, emphasizing them to produce all the goods that are imported in India within the country. Now, that is how the self-reliance objective has also been inserted into the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. So these exercises can't bring a radical transformation in the economy immediately, because you can also cite here an example of what was seen in the context of a New Deal of America. Quote here, the New Deal of America, which was undertaken by the American President Herbert Hoover in 1929 after the Great Economic Depression of the USA. India is almost at the verge of same sort of scenario. All right. And there, under the New Deal, they adopted relief, recovery, and reform measures. So we have to understand, we have to provide relief for everyone. Then we have to also recover the areas or sectors which we have lost in last 7 to 8 months or 9 months of lockdown, whatever you can say. And then we have to also introduce reform, that is in the sector of infrastructure, in the sector of agriculture. We need to introduce reform also to improve our economy. So relief, recovery, and reform are the answers to Atmanirbhar Bharat program. Rather to discourage import, we should actually work upon these fundamental aspects of improving the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. That's actually the critical examination. Okay. So that's what actually you have to conclude the answer, in fact. Fine. So with this, I'm concluding today's discussion. It's already too late. So we will again meet for discussing the I would say questions of test 8 and 9 of ethics paper, probably on Monday or Tuesday. Once I'll confirm from Kanishk sir, I will give you the detail about that on the group itself. Okay. So accordingly, we'll arrange one more discussion, which will include both the test of 8 and 9 together. Okay. So one more discussion, and then finally we'll evaluate the papers of your model test and we'll send you the feedback completely. Okay. So with this, then I'm signing it off. Good night to all of you.
Amit, this is a beauty.
Acha, Nikhil.
This is a beauty.
Yes. Welcome.
I never thought, and I don't think so कि हमने कभी expect भी किया होगा. I mean, somewhere around 11:45 we are taking class.
That is the advantage of Corona pandemic, na? I mean, you can take the class at any moment, at any point of time.
Oh my God, sir, seriously.
I mean,
सर मैंने तो just वैसे ही on कर लिया कि oh my God.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
This is the mother of invention. सही बोला. तो अभी क्या है कि अभी हम लोग मतलब चलते चले गए और बहते चले गए अभी धारा में, तो टाइम जो है पता भी नहीं चला, टाइम ऑलमोस्ट जो है 12 बजने वाले अब. ठीक है, तो बस अब हम लोग कंक्लूड ही करने वाले थे, आप सही समय पे आ गए, तो ठीक है, तो हम लोग इस पे कंक्लूड करते हैं. निखिल सर, आपको भी गुड नाइट. ठीक है,
ओके सर, गुड नाइट सर, गुड नाइट.
मिलते हैं फिर हम लोग.
गुड नाइट ऑल ऑफ यू.
बाय, गुड नाइट. चलिए, बाय.
निखिल सर.
हाँ, यस रोहित,
सर वो मैप का आपने बताया था ना कुछ, तो एक आधा घंटे का सेशन लेने के लिए, वो मैप जैसे इंडिया का ड्राइंग किया था, आज के पेपर में ड्रॉ किया था, तो सिन्हा सर ने गोल किया है वो.
अच्छा, एक काम करते हैं, whenever you are free.
सर पढ़ने के लिए एक ही काम है हमारे पास, अभी पढ़ो. आप बताइए कब फ्री हो गया हम.
अच्छा,
हम लोग के हिसाब से एडजस्ट कर सकते हैं.
आफ्टरनून में देख लेते हैं
सर, कभी भी चलेगा, बस आप 2 घंटे पहले, क्योंकि फोन बंद रहता है मेरा सर उस समय, तो इसीलिए मुझे पता नहीं चलता है. तो
whenever you are free, give me a call, कर लेंगे.
ठीक है सर, चलेगा. ओके, थैंक यू.
ठीक है, ओके, बाय.